Welcome to the 1905 podcast. Joe and I have been going to Stamford Bridge for over 30 years. For the past 3 years, we've been exchanging voice notes on everything from the highs in Porto to the lows of Potter. Each week, this podcast will take you inside our unfiltered thoughts on all things Chelsea, sharing our view from Gate 13 of the Matthew Harding stand. Let's hit the notes. The final whistle's just blown. Chelsea 2, Fluminense 0, and we were really good, weren't we? Really, really good. Fantastic performances across the pitch. I mean, yeah, I'll go into a couple of individuals in a second and obviously hand over to Joe and get your thoughts as well. But just the way we played, I thought there was a really good interview for those who didn't see it with Maresca not long after the Champions League final, when PSG obviously absolutely dismantled Inter and were brilliant. And he did it. It was an Italian interview, so bits of it were translated. But the thing that jumped out to me and was pretty well shared on social media was him talking about how PSG were just relentless. And basically every single one of the forwards was like a running machine. They were horrible to play against, so fast to win the ball back, so fast when they moved forward, etc. And he said that, at Chelsea we're steadily trying to build a version of that. I think you could have like a small version of that. And you look at some of the stuff that we've seen and I think that the last 2 or 3 games actually, because I think we've played really well in the knockout stage of the tournament, you can sort of see it. Like, you watch how we press, how those forwards are, like dogs after a bone to win the ball back. It's really, really encouraging. And then actually when we move forward with purpose, we move quick, and there's sort of times when you can see the control. And I thought the second half, it was a very controlled performance, wasn't it? Where we keep it, we slow it down, we play at our pace. But then when we go, when we really want to, when we're playing Neto through using his pace, or obviously for that second goal from Joao Pedro, which I'm sure we'll talk more about, when we go on the break, we're quick, it does give you those sort of shades of what we saw with PSG and kind of what is the current real mode of football that's so effective. So yeah, really, really exciting performance, I thought. We're in another final, and it's of course going to be, we'll be firm underdogs playing against either Real Madrid or PSG. We'll find out later tonight. But either way, what an occasion for Chelsea. It felt like we've lived the last 2 or 3 years being, as fans, of laughing stocks of how this new era has been going, and suddenly it feels all very different. And I know not everyone's taking this tournament as seriously as in terms of the teams who aren't there and aren't necessarily watching it, but we know as fans, having watched the games, the teams who are here are taking it very seriously. The South American teams, it's massive for them. And actually, I think the big European teams are taking it pretty damn seriously as well. Man City obviously went out, but I watched the extended highlights of that game, and when you watch how, even just how they were celebrating when they scored and how they reacted when they conceded, they were not treating it like a friendly. So yeah, it's definitely been a tournament that has massively grown on me, which I thought it would do as we've been going through it. And yeah, I'm suddenly very, very excited for that big final on Sunday. And I think either way, whatever happens from this point forward, it puts Chelsea right back in the big time, doesn't it? In terms of perception of the club. We'll be in a huge game in this first sort of big global World Cup tournament in this format. And forever, Chelsea would have been one of the first finalists. And I think I think that's huge. I think it's why, the stature of the stature of the club, I think people really underestimate that, actually. It's why someone like Joao Pedro obviously had the choice of Newcastle and Chelsea, and just immediately against Chelsea. And you think, well, he'll have more competition at Chelsea. It's probably a more difficult place for him to get into the lineup, although maybe not after watching today. And yeah, I think the stature of Chelsea is still huge. People forget that, a lot of these young guys who we're signing now will have grown up. Their first football memories will have been of that 2012 Drogba and Munich kind of era, and they'll have seen Chelsea win the Champions League again as they're growing up as young footballers against Man City, and that's kind of the Chelsea that they know, and yeah, maybe it's a Chelsea that we can look forward to again, because it feels like there's something building, doesn't it, in terms of what you're seeing on the pitch and the fight. I'll pick out just a couple of players, because I then want to hand over to Joe, but I think that I've got to go with Joao Pedro. I mean, I think I said, and it's maybe I was getting a bit carried away, that his debut off the bench and in the quarterfinals, was one of the best Chelsea debuts I've seen in some time. I was just really impressed with everything he did when he came on, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say those are the two best Chelsea first goals I can remember from a player, maybe ever, probably ever, in terms of landing on his feet with two great goals. Oscar, for those who can remember how he came on the scene actually against Juventus in the Champions League, would maybe have an argument. But in terms of two brilliant goals, I mean, wow. I mean, the first one was Thierry Henry-esque, wasn't it? Just opened his body up, curled it, just picture perfect into the corner, just unbelievable. And then the second goal was all about power and pace and actually a little bit of selfishness, which just making the right decision, but doing it in quickly and in the right way, which maybe we then didn't see from Jackson later. And if you're going to take on the decision to shoot, you have to score. You certainly have to work the keeper. And yeah, he was brilliant. What a player we have signed. I obviously didn't, I said it on the podcast, I didn't know enough about him really to sort of have a big judgment on whether he'd be a good signing or not. It's obviously very early days. I know that you, Joe, were really excited, and since I've watched and read quite a lot of analyst stuff and heard Brighton fans talk about him, and actually particularly the Brighton fans that I've seen, they have nothing but good things to say about him, and just sort of saying how good he could be. And often you'll get a little bit of like, oh well, we'll see, he's not great, but there's been none of that. There's just been like, yeah, you've got someone pretty special here. Someone said that they're as disappointed as losing him as they were when they lost Caicedo, because they really think he's that good, and obviously we know just how good Caicedo's been, so it's sort of praise indeed. And maybe Caicedo's the other person that I'll mention, because he was again a colossus, just unbelievable today. But you just worry, don't you, about that injury at the end. Hopefully it's not too bad. Doesn't look great, certainly doesn't look good for Sunday's game, which is going to come around very quickly. But just hope it isn't anything more serious. But either way, he's a huge loss to not have in the final, because as we know, we're just a very different team when he's in the pitch. And 93rd minute, just a real kick in the teeth to have it that late. But c'est la vie. Great night. Feels buzzing again to be Chelsea, and yeah, can't wait for that final. What an occasion.
Good morning from a sunny Surrey. Yes, I've woken up with a massive smile on my face as Chelsea are through to the Club World Cup final. And as great as an achievement as that is, and it is a very good achievement, I'm just more impressed with the way the team are dealing with things, the way the team are growing together. Having competitive, high-octane matches is a far better way than having half a dozen pre-season friendlies where no one really gives a shit. And like we had last year, Chelsea didn't really win a game. I think they won one match out of 6 or 7. And that was against one of the American teams or Mexican teams who weren't very good. And you don't really get a sense of how the team are going to shape up. And they've come off the end of a long season. We've gone into this Club World Cup with maybe a little bit of scepticism and what will we do? Will we fancy it? Are we going to go for it? Are the other teams going to be up for it? Who wants it the most, type of a thing? And okay, maybe a slow start. We did win our first match, but the performances have picked up round on round. And maybe last night's performance wasn't as good as perhaps the Benfica game or the Palmeiras match, but I thought it was very good for about half an hour after half time. I thought we started the game very well. And obviously we scored that goal and we created a few chances, but we did give Fluminense a few kind of half moments in that first period, which I would like us to clean up. But I said to Chris at half time, I would like us to go and really put the foot down now, try and get that second, and if being greedy, can we get a third? And that's exactly what we did. We came out after half time and we absolutely blew Fluminense away. They couldn't live with us. We created so many chances. Sometimes they weren't clear cut, but we got in behind them. Some great crosses from Gusto, some excellent crosses from Neto and Cucurella from the other side. And obviously those lovely intricate balls. I mean, Palmer and Enzo were just slotting people in for fun, and we just couldn't quite finish the move off. But obviously Joao Pedro scoring 2 brilliant goals. I'll talk about his second goal as I'm already speaking about the second half right now. Obviously that breakaway move just kind of epitomised all what Chelsea have done in this tournament so far. We haven't been quite as possession-based. We've been a little bit more counter-attack, and I don't know if anyone else is feeling that. Whether we'll go back to a more possession-based thing, I don't know. Is this just because we're playing a tournament that we're playing a little bit differently? I'm not too sure, but I would like to think that this is something we're going to see next year. I'm happy for us to have control of games. I don't mind that. When you suddenly see Chelsea out of control of those matches, you kind of go, oh, are we playing badly or are we just playing differently? And I think we are just playing slightly differently. What was slightly concerning, I suppose, was we had all this domination in the second period and they had 2 long balls over the top and the Fluminense striker managed to get 2 shots away at Robert Sanchez and from sort of out of nowhere. But that comes with the way that Chelsea were pressing so far up the field with the defenders in the midfield. Yeah, you're going to leave yourself short sometimes at the back, but I think overall the team was just an absolute joy to watch. And in that second period particularly, I was just watching it with a massive smile on my face, going, "This is the sort of Chelsea I want to watch. Fun, exciting, players coming on and off the field. You're going, I'm disappointed he's going off, but I'm pleased he's coming on as well." So that's an incredible state to be in. That element of we don't really have too many weak players is something we haven't had for a long time, and the club really are strengthened in every position pretty much. But I know we've bought a lot of attacking players, and where Maresca's going to end up playing them all is going to be difficult for him. But they must have a plan. We know that Joao Pedro is going to play anywhere along that front 3, left, right, or centre, and we know that Delap plays down the centre, but he also drifts wide and runs that channel really, really well. So there's going to be a very fluid movement up there. I don't think it's going to be one-dimensional at all. And if Nicholas Jackson ends up staying around the club next season, there's been a bit of talk of him maybe leaving the club, but if he does end up staying and being not necessarily the 3rd striker, but one of the 3 strikers, then you've got him to come on as a sub like we had yesterday when Joao Pedro's run 55, 60 minutes. You then can bring on someone like Jackson to terrorise defenders, which he did. He had a really good, I would say, half an hour. I know he made that, he dropped a bollock when he didn't square the ball for Cole Palmer, and Cole Palmer let him know in no uncertain terms what he thought about it, basically screaming at the top of his lungs, directing his vitriol straight into his face and then kicking the post. And, that aggression and that kind of, some people might say that's a show of disrespect for your teammate. I would say sometimes it gives you the opportunity. When Joao Pedro and Delap have come into the team, you've seen them not ball hog, you've seen them not be in it for themselves. And Palmer and others can say to Jackson, look, if you're going to stay in this team, mate, you need to be a team player. You need to be able to look up and see people that are basically 3 yards from goal, middle of the pitch, to knock in a tap in. But like I said earlier on, if he gets that right, he can come on and cause teams all sorts of problems. Or if he starts and Pedro comes on, the coin flip is the other way. And I think those options for Chelsea, I don't think a lot of teams have this. I really don't. Wide players are great, and as we know, Neto and people like Noni Madueke, they're excellent players, but there's something to be said for someone who gets the ball like Joao Pedro did last night. He looks up, sees that top corner or that side of the goal and thinks, yeah, I'm going to have a go here. A lot of wide players don't do that. It's a striker's instinct, and watching that ball fly in last night for Joao Pedro was fantastic, and I think it's something that certainly won't happen every time he has a shot, but it's something we can look forward to and be excited by, that he has that in his locker to be able to do that. And that was fantastic to see. And then you look at players like Pedro Neto, who have just been absolutely brilliant. He was so good again yesterday, Neto. He's had a real change of personality. All this going up to the, Maresca system or whatever, I don't know, going up to the fullback, checking back and passing back to the fullback, just seems to have gone away. Now, yes, give me more of that, please. Feed me loads of that. And it's almost like Neto's kind of gone, well, Noni's got a bit of transfer news, around his name at the moment. This is a good opportunity for me to really go and stake a claim and put pressure on everybody and kind of make me the number one winger, make me undroppable. And he seems to be doing that. I've been nothing but impressed by Neto in this tournament. He's been really, really, fantastic. The other player I want to mention, because I don't think he gets enough love, and last night I thought, yeah, you'll do for me, was Enzo Fernandez. He was everywhere. I love the fact that he's prepared to run in behind. Now, it might look like an easy thing to do, but no one seems to do it. It's a very kind of almost like an old-fashioned trait. And you saw Tosin look up in the first half, and Fernandez was only maybe half a yard offside. The ball didn't quite get to him anyway. But Chelsea tried this a few times last year, and it did work now and again. But he is the one that is prepared to go in behind and cause defensive problems. You want people like him running off defenders, because what that does, that then drags away the centre half for people like Delap and Joao Pedro to do their best work. But not only was he great at the running, he was tackling everybody. He was kicking people. He was, prepared to go and get himself a yellow card if he had to. Because Fluminense were sticking it about. They were really kicking Chelsea. They weren't shy in putting it around. And it took him at one point to go in. He went in a little bit high, but he did win the ball. He didn't get booked, I don't think, for that tackle. But it kind of laid down a bit of a marker to kind of go, no, we're not here to be pushed around. And his Instagram post this morning, which basically said that, Chelsea are back in the finals. It's taken longer than it should have done. But we're here for it. I mean, he seems to get us. It just gets us. I wasn't sure about him when he first came. Being Argentinian, sometimes they haven't always worked out for Chelsea and other clubs. But he really has been someone that I've grown to love. I always wanted him to work out because I thought there was always a player there. But, he had a moment, didn't he, in his first 18 months where you're like, he's flattering to see here. He looks a little bit unfit. His passing was a bit dodgy sometimes, wasn't working hard enough. But he seems to have completely changed. Whether or not, I thought about this the other day, when he played at the World Cup, he was outstanding for Argentina. And this Club World Cup is a bit like it's a tournament. It's a World Cup of sorts, but for the clubs. And is he just a very good tournament player? I don't know. But you did see flashes of this at the end of the year with Fernandez, that he was becoming better and better and adding to his goal tally. And I just think he's someone that is not getting nearly enough said about him. I think he's been wonderful in that midfield. He helped out Andrés Santos last week in the game against Palmeiras really well. He helped him through the game. Obviously, he helped Caicedo through the game last night. And then when he went off, obviously, he helped Santos and things. I just think that he has been underrated and underplayed for some time now, and I think he deserves an awful lot of credit, because I think he's the reason for a lot of the reason why Chelsea are doing well at the moment. And I hear a lot of podcasts. I listen to a few podcasts about Chelsea now and again, other ones, and there's a lot of talk about him kind of as being the player that people would drop. When Pedro comes in or when this player comes in, I would drop him. And I'm like, you've got no idea. He is not someone you drop. I think you can certainly bring him out of the team now and again, because if you want to change the formation or you want to change personnel, give him a rest or whatever, of course. I'm not saying he's undroppable in that sense, but I think that to get rid of Fernandez, to play somebody else, no, you don't drop your best players just to try and fit someone in who might fit the system better. That is just not for me. I think you need to play him and give him. The more game time he gets and the more success he has with Chelsea, I think you're going to see a real cult hero there. He's already becoming that for me. He's a real little shithouse. If we go back to that Man United game all those years ago when we went in for a scrap and a fight at Old Trafford and no one came with him. Well, gone are those days, because any time now that there's an issue, you've got Cole Palmer even going in, steaming into other people, pushing people away. Things I never thought I'd ever see. And I just think this is a really, really top player that we're seeing developing in front of our eyes now. I think Enzo deserves so much credit, because Caicedo gets all the plaudits, and rightly so in many cases. But I think Enzo has been really underrated in the last few weeks and months, and I think he for me is the one that's shining above everybody in that midfield at the moment, because he offers us something different. We know that Caicedo tackles and he's robust and he's an engine, but that's all well and good. But you need people the other side of the ball that are prepared to go and actually get in the box, score goals, create assists, and just generally be a help to the front three, which he's being at the moment with Pedro, Delap, Jackson, Palmer, whoever it might be. He's being like a foil for them to kind of play 1-2s and just generally take players away so they can do their best work. So yeah, he's been superb. As for our talisman, Cole Palmer, probably not his most influential game, particularly in the first half. I sort of wondered where he'd gone. We didn't really seem to get him in the game, which is a slight worry, because you don't want to see him drift out of games more and more. But in the second half, even though he wasn't, I would say, his normal, bamboozling self, he still was pulling off a few tricks here and there. And when he got into those central positions right behind the front man, he was feeding balls wide to Madueke, Neto, etc., and always picks the right pass. There was one moment in the second half near the end when Jackson had already had his shot where he should have passed, where you could see Palmer just go, fuck it, I'm going to shoot as well. And the game was almost done at that point. We were sort of into 88th, 90th minute at that point, so it didn't matter too much. But yeah, I thought even though he wasn't probably his best night, you could just see when defences get tired, even with a below par performance, he could have come away with like 2 or 3 assists and maybe even a goal. If Jackson squares that ball, he might score, get 2 assists. It could be 4-0. When you go, he had a great game. On the face of it, it wasn't. It was probably a 7 out of 10, which is completely fine, of course. But yeah, it just goes to show you that in this system, we put so much pressure on people and so much energy into the legs of the defenders of the opposition that they just get tired. And Fluminense just could not keep up with us at the end. And it was sad to see poor old Thiago, in tears at the end. No one wants to see that. He's obviously been an absolute legend for us, and my God, he's probably one of my most favourite players, I have to say. Thiago Silva is always going to be a class act and a Chelsea legend in my book. Some people might say he didn't play enough years. What was he at their club for? 3 or 4 seasons, and for every single game that he played, he gave his heart and soul to this football club, and yeah, he'll never be forgotten by me. I wish him all the best, and I do hope one day he comes back to the club in some kind of coaching role or advisory role, because what a player to have around the place he would be, or as a coach, certainly. So yeah, so disappointed for him, but obviously really pleased for Chelsea to come away with a win. Sets us up nicely for the final. It'll be a really tough game against either PSG or Real Madrid. And yeah, I'm not expecting to win the game necessarily, but I do think we can give anybody a game. And PSG at the moment are riding the crest of the wave. They are obviously Champions League winners. They destroyed Inter Milan in the final of that competition. So if we don't beat them and they get through against Real Madrid and we don't beat them, then so be it. But as long as we put in a good performance and a good, decent performance and cause them some issues, then who knows? Football, you just never know on the day. And we might be underdogs, but the way this Chelsea team are playing, it wouldn't surprise me if we were to go against anybody and win a game at the moment. So, the confidence is pretty high for me at the moment. I don't want to get carried away, and I don't want anyone to think that Chris and I are getting carried away, but I think it's always good to be positive, and this team has definitely turned a huge corner, and what that turns into next season we'll find out soon enough. But I think there'll be a lot of clubs looking at us and not fancying their chances. And when that team sheet gets put out on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, I think there'll be a few people going, oof, look at that bench as well. No, they're good in their first 11. They've got a bench that's to die for. So yeah, good things at the moment from Chelsea. Pleased to be in the final, and we'll discuss a bit more after this.
So that's how Joe and I saw the game, obviously watching from hundreds of miles away in London. But we had a good friend and a colleague of mine, Fahad Khan, who was there in New York to watch it in person. So I'm going to hand over to Fahad now for his perspective on the game. And yeah, what a moment to see Chelsea play a competitive game in the US. So for those who've listened to the podcast for a while, might have heard Fahad a couple of times on the podcast before, but here's his perspective on the game from New York.
All Grace, this is Fahad reporting from MetLife Stadium, where I just witnessed an electric Chelsea win that gets us to the final of the Club World Cup. First things first, it was a sweltering day today, and I don't know how the players played 90 minutes. Every single person that was in or around the stadium was soaked through their clothes with sweat, and I think it was 95 degrees, so around 35 degrees Celsius in the stadium the whole time during the game. Just an absolutely disgusting day, but shout out to the boys for pulling it off. The ambiance in the stadium was actually electric from start to finish. I think they reported it was over 70,000 fans in attendance. And I'd say roughly 60 to even 65% of those were Chelsea fans. There was probably a good amount of neutrals in there too. And saw a lot of Caicedo Ecuador jerseys. There's a lot of Ecuadorian fans in the region. So not surprising, but still really cool to see. I think he probably got the second loudest round of applause after Thiago Silva during the player introduction. So that was very cool. As for the match, man, what can I say? Joao Pedro really stole the show. Uh, I mean, Joao Pedro, first of all, the two amazing goals he scored, the link up play, just making the most of his chances when he got them. Every time he got the ball, you just felt very composed and felt very secure with the ball at his feet, which is not something we could say about the striker position in Chelsea for a while. So that was really refreshing. The other thing is, I just want to really say thank you to Brighton and to our recruiting staff for constantly going after Brighton players because besides the two goals from Joao Pedro, Cucurella and Caicedo were the two best players on the pitch. Every single time you looked when you needed to make a play, one of them was there. Whether to stop an attack, whether to pop up in the box, whether to make the final pass, they were always in the right position at the right time. And despite the heat, just the amount of energy those two play with is just remarkable. All in all, it was a lovely day out to go watch the Chelsea and to see them win a competitive match in the US, which is very rare for them to ever play here. So I'm glad I was able to witness one. And really, really sad to be missing the final on Sunday, but I have faith that we can beat either PSG or Real Madrid. Both those are obviously amazing teams, but the way we're playing and the way this team is growing together, it's really, really exciting to see.
Oh, such a cool moment to be there at the game. I say, Fahad had worked to my team, and I said to him, he asked me, like, oh, is it okay if I take a day off late on? I think the day before, actually. I was like, Fahad, I'd be annoyed if he didn't take the day off to go and watch Chelsea play in the US. It's like, what, how many times in your lifetime to get that chance? And yeah, so, what a game to be at. What a game. And you really saw that. I mean, Fahad talked about it today, but you really saw it in all of the sort of people not playing in the game, like all the presenters on TV and stuff were like sweating buckets, weren't they? So yeah, massive credit to the players for the performance they put in, and yeah, just the work rate. I think that's the big thing that I mentioned it earlier, but the work rate you're seeing from this Chelsea team is it's really something else. It's a bit of a throwback to I think the Chelsea teams that we've all loved. I'm not saying Chelsea fans are unique in this because, of course, we're not. We're just football fans. But there's definitely a bit of the Chelsea DNA that loves to see, maybe because we've grown up in that, a lot of us in that Abramovich era of real fight and battle. But when you see someone like Joao Pedro coming back, heading away corners, even Cole Palmer working his arse off to like make a difference for the team, it just, I don't know, it just makes you happy, doesn't it, as a fan? It's kind of exactly what you want to see. A huge game. I'm recording this on the day after the game. The game, Real Madrid versus PSG, hasn't happened at time of recording, so I still don't know who we're going to be playing. Who cares? To be fair, it's two massive teams, massive clubs. We're going to be underdogs whoever we face. You kind of probably, on paper, would fancy us a little bit more against Real Madrid just because of how good PSG have looked, but who knows? It's a one-off occasion. I think the one thing I would say is something I think we've talked about a lot in the last couple of years is, probably longer, really, as Chelsea fans. I just like to see us have a proper go in a big game and really take the game to the opposition. So many times last season it felt like a little bit of a turning point when we beat Liverpool at home, because there were so many games, Man City away, Liverpool away, sort of jumping in mind, played well, but didn't have the belief to really go and win the game. And so I really hope that whoever we play, we give them a proper game and like play on the front foot and do everything we've been doing in the knockout stage, which I talked about earlier, that's been so impressive. So I think more than anything, I hope we do that and give a proper account of ourselves on the day, whatever the result is. Obviously, you don't want to get disgraced, clearly. But, if we go out and have a proper go at these teams, who knows? I think we've got a real chance. We've got a real chance. It's a final. Anything can happen. So that's massive. Still waiting on the Caicedo news. Who knows what his status is? But I tell you what, Andre Santos, an amazing stat came on. I saw on social media today of how many times he's won the ball in the short minutes he's had in the Chelsea shirt. He's a real player, isn't he? And if he's the man to come in for Caicedo on the day, then do you know what? It's exactly what we've been talking about in terms of the strength and depth that feels like it is in the Chelsea squad at the moment. Who's going to play up front? That's a question. Is it Delap and Joao Pedro comes in with maybe the Nkunku role? Is it something else? Who knows? I think the lineup's going to be fascinating in its own right. Does Reece come in for Gusto, who, let's give Gusto his flowers, played very well actually. He kept their left winger, who's very dangerous, very quiet on the night. Probably one of Gusto's sort of quietly effective defensive games in some time, and was really good. And just a huge, just having the options, it does really feel like we have good options across the pitch, doesn't it? And my final thought, I'm going to hand over to Joe, would just be on this progress that we've seen. A lot of the talk on the media today has been, Chelsea are, looking a real team again. How far could they go next season? And we'll talk about that in a separate podcast as we approach the real next season, I guess. It's mad that other teams are already coming back to pre-season, but we're waiting. But I think that there's a lot to be very, very optimistic about, isn't there? It really feels that way. There's a hunger, there's a passion that we maybe hadn't seen, and there are no two players, I think, that epitomise that more than our centre midfielders. I remember saying to Joe, and I think I said on the podcast maybe 6 months ago, that I always had this feeling that this era of Chelsea's spending would be kind of dictated really by the success of Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo. When you spend £250 million on effectively two players right in the engine of your midfield, you are banking on that working out and being the right call. And it's been about 18 months ago, I messaged a good friend of mine, a big Chelsea fan, and one of the best footballers I've ever played with, a guy called Matt Dymock, and he was a brilliant centre midfielder. And I said, what do you make of these two? Because I'm looking at them and I'm worried. And we were both kind of really, I think, concerned at that point, because not only individually they struggled. I think Enzo had a decent sort of first couple of months when he came in, but by this point it was December. He sort of faded in that second half of the year. Caicedo had come in and struggled, I think, by his own admission in his first season, so the first half of the season at this point. So this is like Christmas time, and even more interestingly, as that season went on, it didn't look like they had much chemistry. You watched the two of them together, and it was almost like they both played better when the other one wasn't playing. You'd almost look at Caicedo and go, oh, he looks actually better when he was with Gallagher. Likewise with Fernandez, or when Cucurella started inverting, it's like, okay, it's given a new lease of life to one or the other of them. And the big concern was like, okay, we've got these two really expensive midfielders. They can't play together. There's no chemistry there. It doesn't feel like the chemistry is quite right. And you look at it now and you go, the opposite couldn't be more true. They almost epitomise what this Chelsea team is all about in terms of fight, passion, quality, enthusiasm. Enzo obviously wears the armband quite a lot now, and you're like, yeah, no, he should do. He absolutely should do. The way they were gunning after the ball every time we lost it, sometimes, going maybe a bit over the ball, almost a bit like, hey, guys, calm down. But you know what, as fans, it's exactly what you want to see. And they've gone from 18 months ago being have we bought right here? Should we have gone for, Declan Rice? Should we have gone for McAllister from Brighton? Like, have we made the wrong calls? To now being like, on paper, there's a good shout we've got the best midfielder in the league. And you look at those two and you think about the cover that they've got now in Lavia and Santos and all the other options. It's pretty exciting. So I just wanted to shout those two out, because I've been, particularly in Fernandez's case, been a little bit concerned over times. And do you know what? He has really, really proven himself now as an absolute leader in this team. And if we are to do, serious stuff on Sunday, you are almost certain that they'll be a big part of it. So yeah, massive shout to those two. And I'm really looking forward to it. I have to say, I'm going to be nervous, I think, when the kickoff comes around, because it feels like a big moment for us. But yeah, here's hoping whatever happens, it's been a great tournament, and yeah, let's hope we're back in 4 years' time to defend it. Over to you, Joe.
I have to say, I found it incredibly hilarious listening to my work colleagues over the last week or so talk about Chelsea and basically how unfair it is that their teams aren't in it, i.e. I work with a Man United fan, 2 Liverpool fans, a West Ham fan, a Tottenham fan, etc., etc. And the sort of the hate for Chelsea being in the World Club Cup has been very funny, actually, just to listen to, because I just kind of sit there and nod along. I don't really kind of get involved in all the nonsense because, I just can't be bothered. And it kind of always just makes me smile, because I just think to myself, oh, you're so bitter. But there we go. I think it's always going to be one of those tournaments, isn't it? It's going to polarise people. If your team's in it, you love it. If your team's not in it, you're like, oh, I don't care, it's rubbish and all that. But deep down, I think, every Tottenham fan or West Ham fan or a Liverpool fan wishes they were there, and those are the facts of life. But Chelsea are, and they're in the final, and they've got a chance to win the whole bloody thing, which is quite impressive. I'm actually just watching the Real Madrid PSG game now, and it's 0-0 currently. And I think Rudiger's just done a hamstring, which is never nice to see an ex-Chelsea player do something like that. But if he doesn't play in the final and they get there, that'll be a big plus for Chelsea. So I'm not going to complain about that too much. I suppose going away slightly from the Club World Cup for a moment, I was thinking today about some of the predictions we had at the beginning of last season and just general chats between Chelsea fans over the last 12 to 18 months on the team and the squad and where we were going and where we were heading. And the American owners were always slated, and the football sports directors were always slated. And have they got everything right? Absolutely not. There's been a few things where they've missed the mark completely on ticket pricing, and the new dugout club, which is like, what is it, about $3,000 to sit behind the dugout or something at Chelsea, something absolutely ridiculous. But this is something that happens in American sport, and they've tried something, and whether it's worked or not, I don't know. I don't think the dugout club is always full, but that's just one example of something that hasn't quite paid off or worked. But annoyingly, and I don't love this, that's kind of the modern world a little bit. It is becoming a little bit corporate at times, and I do hope that the ownership and the people around the club don't lose sight of that in the future. You don't want to see Chelsea fans phased out, and if there are long-standing fans that aren't renewing memberships and season tickets, you hope that the people that are coming in aren't just tourists. Now, I know that's kind of what the club would like, because they're more likely to go to the club shop and spend £100 or £200 on a new shirt or a jumper or a football or a kit for their kid, whereas, hardened Chelsea fans that work hard for their money, they won't do that. They might buy their kit or their shirt at the start of the season, and then they'll turn up, they'll see their friends, they'll have a beer and a laugh and a memory. They'll watch the game, they'll buy a programme and have a beer at half time. But, that's what it's always been about for us. It's always been about that side of things. We're not in it for the club to fleece us, if you know what I mean. But I think if you speak to many, many teams in the Premier League and possibly around Europe, particularly the top end teams, this isn't a Chelsea problem. This is a problem across the board. And it's all about trying to make as much money as you can for the club to then go and try and buy a player for 30 or 40 million pounds in the transfer market. So it's trying to stay one step ahead. But sometimes, they will get those things slightly wrong. But on the football side of things, I think you are seeing the start of something quite not unique, because I think PSG have gone about this in a certain way. I think, Chris, you mentioned this earlier on. But, having watched that Champions League final, I was nothing but impressed by PSG, the age of their squad and the way they pressed everybody on the field, that youthfulness, but with a smart kind of old head on young shoulders type of mentality, plus with a boatload of skill and flair, was nothing short of sensational to watch. And I believe that is kind of where we're heading. That's the dream anyway. I'm not saying we're going to get there next season necessarily, but it's funny how these people that have been just slagging the club over and over and over again have suddenly gone extremely quiet, and it's almost like they wait for a loss, or maybe a poor draw or something, or they go out of the cup and it's like, I told you so, we're rubbish, he's no good. And I think I just stopped listening to these people now. They really are quite pathetic, and I've got to be frank with you, quite sad, and they really need to kind of grow up. Chelsea have always won or lost games, and you support them through thick and thin, and it's almost like I get the feeling that they're hoping that Chelsea don't win a game so they can go, I told you so. And I just think that is the biggest, that's the biggest, wankiest thing that you can be as a football fan. You might not like everything you see, you might not like every player that gets bought or sold, but do you know what? At the end of the day, it's a business, and it is a business. We are a football club, of course, and at the heart of it, I hope that remains the same forever. You don't want to see anyone sell their soul for anything. But I just find those people that had that, the loudest people that were shouting from the rooftops about this is a dramatic and drastic change, and it's unnecessary. And I myself have called for more experienced players in the team. I'm not asking for 5 experienced players in the team. I was asking for 1 or 2. Not necessarily Thiago Silva at the age of 40, but someone that was kind of maybe at the age of 28, 29, who'd won everything in the game, to try and get that player in to then coach and help these fantastic youngsters through difficult times in the season. I think, imagine having a Thiago Silva in the squad last year when they're going through that bad patch. He'd have certainly been worth about 10 or 11 points last year just on his own, by the encouragement and that kind of desire, that captaincy, leading by example. Even if you're not captain, that feeling of, I'll show you what to do, even if I'm not the captain, and you'll follow me regardless. And those team talks at half-time and full-time hit harder when you're not doing so well, and you have a memory to draw off of. Whereas young players like this have only got their youth teams and their early stages of they might have played 1 or 2 games in the Premier League or in the Serie A, but they haven't got anything else in their men's football career to look back on and say, remember the hard times. Hopefully now that team have seen last season's bad run and gone, we don't want to go through that again. Yeah, we're going to lose games of football. Absolutely we are. But can we look upon that and say, do you know what? We might have lost a game or 2 here, but let's not go on a run where we lose 6 or we don't win in 10. Like, that can't happen again. If we want to be serious and a serious team, and for people, not just in England, but across Europe, to take us seriously again, we need to suddenly say, right, no, we're going to stand up and do something about this. And when new players like Delap and Pedro come into the side, they're coming into a team that's had that bad run already, and they go, all right, what happened last year? What did you do to get out of it? Nothing. Okay, but we know now not to do that. We need to talk more. We need more team meetings. We need whatever it might be. So, yeah, I'm just really at a point where I'm like, I can't predict the future. I can't predict if Chelsea are going to finish 1st or 14th next season. I look at Arsenal, I look at Liverpool, I look at Man City, and I go, right, how good are you? Liverpool have strengthened hugely. Frimpong, Kirkes, Wirtz, they're probably going to get 1 or 2 more in before the season's finished, before the transfer window's finished, I should say. But Man City are obviously clearly strong, and they've strengthened too. Arsenal they're obviously knocking on the door for Noni Madueke, who doesn't really scare me too much if he goes there. Zubimendi has arrived this week, and obviously they've signed Kepa. They're looking to buy Gyökeres from Sporting Lisbon. And look, all those teams are going to strengthen. Are we better than them? I would say, on the base of it, I think we've got every chance, as good as they have, of finishing in those top 4 positions. I don't see, even though Arsenal have been together longer and Liverpool have been together longer, Pep's been there a long time too, even though his team's probably changed more than most. I don't see Chelsea as massive outsiders. I think Maresca will play us down. I think he did last year. I think he will continue to play us down. I think our start to the season is quite crucial because I think those games are relatively straightforward. No Premier League game is straightforward. But on the face of it, would you rather have, Palace, Fulham and wherever, or would you want Man City and Liverpool to start the season? Well, clearly you want Palace and Fulham if you can help it. So I think it will be good if the manager gives us a little bit of a boost next year. By that question's going to be asked, he will probably bat it away quite bluntly like he always does and just say, no, we're not ready for this, or whatever. I hope he doesn't say that. I hope there's a little bit more ambition about him next season, because I think he kind of, particularly if they go and win this bloody thing, that's going to be fantastic. You can point to the fact you've got the Club World Cup badge on your chest for the next 4 seasons. I mean, that in itself is going to be quite funny, and watch every rival fan piss their pants when we turn up with a Club World Cup badge on our shirt. Will be quite interesting. But I just really think and hope that the manager will not play us down to the point where you're like, we can't finish here, we can't do this, and we can't do that. I think there has to be a ceiling now that you've got to say, right, we can break through this glass ceiling. We're going to go through that. We're going to smash through it, and we'll come out the other side. Because I think players like Cole Palmer are going to be saying, like, hang on a minute. We said this last year. We're not going to keep saying it every single season, particularly if we start well. So I don't think Chelsea should be title favourites or anything like that, particularly as Liverpool have strengthened heavily already, and they've already got a good squad. But Salah and Van Dijk and these players, they won't go on forever. And obviously they've lost their lover boy, Trent Alexander-Arnold, as well. So he's gone, but they've replaced him with a very good player. But certainly Chelsea should be in the mix. And I think that we as fans should demand a level of ambition. And ambition is the key word there. I don't mind if Chelsea finish in the top 4 in any of those places, if you can see another jump in progression. There has to be progression next season again. I think as long as we keep moving forward, then that's all you can ask for. So when the transfer window is fully closed and everybody knows what they're going to be playing with for certainly the first 6 months of the season, we'll have a proper chat about it then, where we think Chelsea might finish and where we think other teams might finish. But as for now, I think we've got an excellent squad developing. They all seem to be getting on together. There's a harmonious group, it seems. There's 1 or 2 maybe. Jackson might not be as harmonious as he once was, but I'm sure if he stays, he'll learn to kind of knuckle down and get involved. And if there is 1 or 2 people that aren't quite on board, so if Nonny's not quite on board with it all, then if he has to leave, then he has to leave. And there's nothing wrong with that. We wish him well if he goes, but ultimately this is Chelsea Football Club and we want the best for us. And I think if they can, this is Chelsea, by the way, if they can maybe get that goalkeeper that we're after, I think that changes things significantly for Chelsea in the right direction. And nothing would make me happier than to sort of stand in a few pig ignorant Chelsea fans' faces and just say, you didn't believe, you thought it was all over, you were prepared to give up when Roman left. And a certain few of us were like, no, I think we can get back. And I think if the club do things right, and it wasn't easy to get people on board at the beginning, but I think you're starting to see people get on board now. And, I'd rather you were coming on board now than never at all. So if you're one of those fans that kind of was always like dead against the youth policy and bringing through young players, then, you sort of have a look at yourself and say, well, I was wrong, but be prepared to say that, because I hate people that go, oh yeah, I knew all along this would work. And you go, well, did you? Because I didn't get the sense that you were on board at all. So, listen, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and I know that. And I might have been wrong, Chris might have been wrong, but I think that people that were never even willing to give this a chance are just look so foolish now. And with a little bit of luck and a strong win behind, Chelsea in the next year or 2 could make some significant strides in domestic football and in Europe. And even if we don't win anything, if we're up challenging for these titles again and being in cup finals and finishing first, second or third, or say in the league, and it goes down to a point here and there in these title races, you don't get anything for finishing second and third. I know that, but we haven't been in the mix since 2017. those are the facts. End of. And it wasn't all perfect under Roman, and it was going south quite quickly under Roman. Whether he would have changed some things, I don't know. But when it's all said and done, people can't knock this model the way it's gone at the moment. And even if it goes south tomorrow and this model doesn't quite work out, at least they had a go and they had a plan and they tried something, which at the end of the day is all we can ask for as Chelsea fans. So, yeah, looking forward to the final on Sunday. I hope everybody's going to stay up and watch it. And, yeah, fingers crossed, we might well be champions of the world yet again.
Those were the Chelsea notes for this week. If you enjoyed the podcast, do us a favour and share it with a fellow Blue. And we'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave us a review wherever you're listening. Wherever you may be, stay carefree, and remember, every little thing's gonna be alright.